Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's Charlie Murray, and today we're joined by Todd Andrews. Absolute pleasure to have this man along. I'm working with him in the strength and conditioning space for the last 5 years, and we've achieved some awesome stuff together, and I feel like we've got some pretty exciting stuff to come in the future. So thanks, Todd, for joining me, and we're going to talk about everything S&C, and I hope you enjoy. Ask any comments below, and please subscribe to support us so we can keep bringing you guys this sort of content. Thank you, Todd.
No,
good
thank
to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's it been?
It's been good. Yep, been busy. It's good to sort of catch up and sort of reconnect and make sure that you're tracking on the right path.
Yep.
Before you head over to Europe. So yeah.
What's your background? Because when I met you, you had done a lot with different professional sports. Obviously, a lot in the cycling space. You've worked with some of my mates like Anton Cooper.
Yep.
A lot of the people watching will know who that is. Cross-country athlete. You've done a lot of track cycling stuff, a lot of athletics. So you've got such a wide range of experience, and it's been really valuable for me because you've been able to hone in on what I actually need, and it's all that specific stuff that makes the difference. It's those little few percent that makes me stronger than my competitors on a good day.
Absolutely.
Just give us a quick run through of your background and then how you sort of, when you first met me, what you saw and how you've helped bring out the potential.
Absolutely. I guess my background, I've loved sport my whole life, and for me, my background's actually track and field. So I used to, as a junior, run to a relatively high level, and then when I sort of decided on careers and where I wanted to go, you know, initially it was kind of maybe dabbling in that personal training space, kind of general public, and sort of just people that I guess are passionate about just health and fitness. And then because of my background in sport, it kind of migrated pretty quickly into that sort of sporting space. So I did my degree. I've had a really fortunate opportunities to work with some pretty high level athletes and teams here in New Zealand and also in Australia as well. Done quite a bit in the cycling space. So as I mentioned, sort of definitely worked with some pretty high level mountain bikers in the past.
And the Australian track team, is that right?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of work with the Australian track cycling. So again, it wasn't a full-time gig for me. It was sort of doing a bit of consulting work and just sort of helping support in that space. But what it did for me is it really opened my eyes to cycling and the differences between, you sort of think cycling, it's hands on the handlebars and trying to push through a pedal. It's actually every sport within the cycling world is different, and the way you would train them is completely different. So if you look at a BMXer versus a track cyclist versus a mountain biker, and again, you've got a breadth of mountain bike athletes as well, from I guess your cross country through to yourself, who's obviously enduro. So really understanding the demands, and I guess because I've had a bit of exposure in a whole bunch of different sports, it's really helped me to understand and kind of hone in what are the specific demands that are required for that sport. So once you kind of understand what you need as an athlete, you'll have the sport-specific demands, and we need to kind of tailor programming to suit those sport specifics. But then you've obviously got your own individual kind of needs as well. And again, everyone's
different. Everyone's got the weaknesses and strengths in their own body.
Absolutely. You've got different limb lengths, different, maybe asymmetries through your body, maybe some past injuries that we have to address and work through. If you're not mobile or flexible, and we've got to work on those things as well. I guess just throughout my career, I've had some great opportunities, and I think working with you over the last 5 years, what we've been able to do, it might have, my knowledge wasn't maybe overly great in the beginning, and as we've kind of talked and chatted through things, we've kind of done a little bit of, kind of work through a program and make adaptations and changes and modify based on how you're progressing and moving. And I think we're sort of starting to hone in on a pretty exciting little formula at the moment.
Absolutely. I remember, a few years ago, like just watching videos of riding with you. Whether you're watching sort of Sam Hill or Loic Bruni or myself in slow-mo and watching what forces are going through the bike. And I remember you being really interested by that and soaking it up like a sponge. Obviously, you know how mountain biking works, and you've known that for ages, but enduro and gravity stuff, like you said, is different again.
Absolutely.
We've got more and more specific with our training, and it's the stabilization that's huge, like being really strong so you can take a hit, but then being able to stabilize and to be able to do stuff where you're putting a whole load through one half of your body or even just 1/4 of your body, and then not loading the rest, and vice versa, to keep the bike balanced or to keep upright.
Absolutely.
Situations.
And there's also that, and you and I have sort of talked about it a few times in the past, kind of getting to that flow state as well. So it's almost like, you've got to ride the forces as they come through the bike, and as you sort of absorb them, and you've got to be able to play with those. And it's not as simple. Again, it's not simple. Just get on a bike, pedal hard, and rip down a hill. There's so many different factors that kind of go into it. And I've learnt a lot over the last 5 years, just through my own kind of interest and research that I've done. I've kind of looked into different things, and obviously just that kind of experience that you have in it, and you've kind of shared those with me as well. So you've kind of got the evidence-based stuff, but you've also got that anecdotal sort of evidence, which you are the lived experience of that sort of that space, which has been really cool to grow in that space. So I think for me, seeing where you're at now compared to where you're at 5 years ago, you've come a long way.
Thanks, mate, and it's all thanks to your help. Just thinking back, I remember, I just want to give the viewers something that they can sort of go away and work on, and basically a plan for them to hopefully improve whatever sport you're into. Hopefully some of the nuggets that we can give you now, these little bits of gold, will help you to progress in your own sports and just your general strength and conditioning of your body. To start with, I think the movement screening we did. I'm just going to kind of play back the last 5 years in my head and try and find a few key points. But I remember when I first met you, we did a movement screen. And we, basically just went through a whole lot of different exercises and tried to figure out what parts of the body were lacking. And I mean, you're probably better equipped than anyone to tell us how that works.
I guess it's a screening process I've been involved in for probably the last sort of 15 or almost not quite 20 years of my career. But I guess understanding movement is kind of the foundation. So you've got to have a level of competency within a movement, and I guess creating a framework around that to be able to measure how you're moving, and then how do we obviously see progress along the way. So
what would you measure to start with?
Good question.
Say if someone came in and you'd never met them, and you could only choose 3 things to video and to check.
Top 3, and probably for cyclists particularly, obviously your squatting pattern. So it's a foundational movement pattern. Your single-legged pattern, which is kind of like
jumping onto one leg.
So you've got your single-legged squat, and then you've also got, I guess, what I would consider more of that dynamic kind of how you produce power. So you can transfer those sort of what I'd call sort of more static movements, like your squat, your single-legged squat, your hinge pattern, which again is hinging from the hip, or your kind of, another term we use in the gym world is kind of that Romanian deadlift, which is a kind of a stiff-legged or a soft-legged sort of hinge pattern from the hip. So that kind of ticks probably the 3 key ones that we really want to make sure we nail from a lower body standpoint. And then you can obviously add, in terms of your screening process, you can add more dynamic movements to that. So that might be a counter movement jump as an example. So how well you can, I guess, produce power, and how well you can absorb the landing and the eccentric load coming down.
Smoothly.
And some people that, they might have a strong squatting pattern, but there might be some sort of deficiency or weakness going on. And so identifying as they land, the knees might slightly drop in, or their posture's not in a good position, or they kind of collapse through their trunk or something like that. Again, identifying those things through this screening process, what it does is it helps me to identify what areas we may need to work on. So we've got 7 different fundamental patterns. Obviously the 3 that I've already mentioned, and there's a few more. And then from there, we identify what level we need to sort of prescribe for you. So again, someone that doesn't have high level of movement competency or body awareness, we'll start at a very simple level. We'll just work on body weight movements, just nail the detail in that. And then as they progress and improve and get better, the competency starts to improve, and you can kind of see progress. That's when you start to add a little bit of load or add a little bit more complexity to the movements.
Because most cyclists probably are pretty good off the bat at, I might be generalising here, but for people who've been in a gym before and care about how they're moving and how their body's operating, should be pretty good at most of the basic stuff.
Generally speaking, I would agree with that, absolutely.
I mean, if you had to name, not just for biking, but for any sport really, or just any person in general, is there 3 exercises? Like I've got a few that spring to my mind, like for example, a squat, a deadlift, and maybe a pull-up or a bench press.
Yep.
Maybe that's 4. But is there sort of, I mean, you can repeat that because I just probably heard that from you, so I'm repeating it back to you, but what do you reckon is the, like say 3 or 4 absolutely key movements that you would do in the gym if you only had limited time?
So limited time, you know, again, you want to hit the big rocks, in my opinion.
Yep.
So as you've already mentioned, definitely your squatting pattern. So it could be a back squat, a front squat, an overhead squat.
Yep.
It could be a box style squat as well. So you're kind of going to a certain depth in that squat and then applying a force out of it type scenario.
Yep.
So squatting variations I think are really key. And again, as I said,
The lower body, that's basically the best single, best thing.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
You know, most
Depending
people
on your body, obviously, but
yeah, most people would agree that squatting is a key fundamental. But then, as I mentioned already, like your single-legged. So again, if you've got one leg slightly stronger than the other, and typically most people will have what we call imbalances.
Yeah.
So you know, typically you might say see a 10% difference between your left and your right side. It could be due to a whole bunch of different reasons, injuries. You know, you might be tight in certain areas that are restricting you, as an example.
Yep.
And so working on those imbalances is key as well. So for me, as important, if not more important, would be your single-legged strength. So double-legged strength, or we call your bilateral strength, is important, but then your single-legged strength or your unilateral strength, and particularly for cyclists, if you think about how you apply force to a pedal, has to be a critical piece. So double leg, single leg, and again, it could be single-legged squatting pattern or a single-legged hinging pattern. But yeah, looking at those sort of key movements in the gym space. And then if you kind of looked at the upper body space, so again, for you, just to keep things as simple and as basic as possible, you know, you've got your upper body pushing pattern and your upper body pulling pattern. And if you can keep it as simple as that, then you're kind of nailing most of the detail. And again, there's various exercises you can do. Again, we've mentioned a couple. Bench pressing might be a good option, or some sort of rowing up option. You could also look at sort of vertical pulling, and I think for you that's a really big one. For us is as you're applying force through the pedal, you're really working hard to pull and drive through. So you know, for us, it's you know, as a chin up would be another simple option to look at as well. Yeah,
no, I definitely feel I enjoy the pull-ups and that sort of stuff, and I think the bench press is key because if you come off your bike and have to push off the ground, the stronger, you know, if you can lift your own body weight or something, you're going to be so much better off.
The key,
much less likely to get injured.
Absolutely, and the key word I use in that space, you've got to be robust to be able to handle, again, the typical loads that you're handling. So again, you know, some of those exercises people might be saying, well, they're not necessarily cycling specific exercise, they're fairly general compound based movements. But again, you're creating a level of robustness within the context of those exercises. And then from my standpoint, that's where you kind of build the foundation. And once you've laid the foundation, that's when you get maybe a little bit more specific around the movements. You know, you might have a few more sexy exercises to mix it up and to add that variation and add that specificity to the mix as well. But you know, lay the foundations early, and then from there,
like you said, those big rocks.
Absolutely. 100.
I think we pretty much have nailed what I want to talk about. But I reckon, just quickly, if we could just have a summary of sort of my workout that I've been working on recently. Maybe a little bit of how it's going to change, but just a couple minutes on basically what we've been doing and why. I mean, today I've got 2, but today was the one with the squat, the pull-up, the box step-up, RDL, and the glute bridge.
Perfect.
So maybe just talk us through that one workout, because then we can relate to that easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's sort of trying to cover all bases, and we have a few like, what do you call it, isometric or like single leg things as well.
Yeah, cool. So the program in its current format, I guess we're looking at.
It's a strength phase, right?
It is a strength phase. Yep. So we're kind of laying a foundation. We're just building a solid level, and the thing that I think stands true in most sporting contexts, not all, but most sporting So strength has to be the thing that underpins everything you do.
Yeah.
So the stronger you are, not necessarily the bigger the size of the muscle, but how you produce force, and the strength underpins.
So it's the quality of the muscle too.
Correct. Yeah. So if you can really apply force in the direction that it needs to go for you, and obviously in this case it's cyclic, you're producing force into a pedal. So the stronger you are, the more force you can apply in that sort of scenario, the better the outcomes are going to be. So we've got some pretty foundational movements. I tend to focus a lot on, because you're, I guess what we would class as quite anterior, so kind of front side focused, in a lot of what you do. We need to kind of, again, balance things out more of that posterior. So that's kind of
the glute bridge.
Glutes, hamstrings, calves. There's some key areas that we would kind of try and address and work on as well.
RDL.
Your hinge pattern. We also look at a lot of single leg work, because obviously you're applying force through that pedal.
So it's like a box step up.
So you step up, and we don't go crazy high on the step up. So we want to sort of probably no more than a 30 centimeter height. And the reason for that is because if you look at the difference between the top of the pedal and the bottom of the pedal, it's roughly that sort of 30 centimeter. And again, from a sports specific point of view, you don't need to be applying force in any, in terms of the knee angle and the hip angle and stuff, any more than that really. And if you can get really crazy strong in those positions, then that's going to be of huge benefit for you as well.
Yeah, and that's also, and then we've got the pull-up, which we've just covered really. So the pull-up is just, upper body, it's same thing. We're always doing stuff on the front when we're on a mountain bike, because we're pushing off the handlebars and things, and we're kind of in that full position. But it's good to do something that sort of brings the shoulders back and brings everything out.
Again, that creates a bit more balance between your anterior and your posterior, particularly through your trunk. But also, again, from maybe a sport specific, as you apply force into the pedal, you're going to be pulling back a little bit and creating that resistance.
You have to.
Again, you've got to be strong. So as you push, you're actually pulling and creating that, I guess, that symmetry. Again, as I sort of mentioned before, a little bit of that flow state. So you've got to be able to apply force, that kind of antagonist, protagonist sort of thing going on, to enable you to pedal fast, really.
That's a good point. If you can put all your weight through one pedal, it's about 800 newtons, I reckon. And that means that's going down. So what's coming up? So your hands have got to make up for the difference, right?
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So, Newton's third law. I just pulled that one out. But I think you've got to be able to, any forces that you apply down, you've got to be able to have that push, pulling and pushing in the other direction.
Which is why we do that sort of Bosu ball and Swiss ball stabilization. Like we, obviously you would have either just seen it or you're just about to see it. It's basically you get on a Swiss ball with that handlebar or a barbell, and it's moving. You're trying to stabilize. And then we have the same thing with the dead bug. We're trying to stabilize different limbs at different points all through the core. So it's all linked through the core. Stabilizing different limbs, and I think that stuff's been key for me. Like that can make a difference between having a crash and holding on to it.
100%. And again, I probably haven't mentioned it, but your core strength is crucial to this whole, again, when
that's the foundation
think about the formula, right? So again, you can have strong lower body, you can have a strong upper body, but if your core is weak, the way I describe it, it's like shooting a cannon off a canoe. Think about that.
It goes backwards.
Absolutely. So you've got that visual in your head of this canoe. As you fire that cannon, that there's no stability in the canoe. It pushes it backwards, and you've got no ability to kind of resist against or create that anchor point. So core strength is such a critical part of the process. And again, it doesn't have to be anything too crazy. Your prone holds and all those types of isometric and kind of anti-rotation ones are really good. And then obviously you can chuck in those sexy ones, the stability-based ones as you're progressing closer to season.
Extra for experts.
Absolutely.
And the pile-off press, I like that one too.
Really good one.
So that's a really good one, which we've just explained in the gym, but we'll just quickly run over that. Pile-off press, obviously with that band coming out, and you can put a weight on it, sling it back and forth just to create some movement, but you're basically trying to resist the rotation.
Absolutely.
So, that's a quick overview, basically, of everything that Todd and I have been doing. Basically, we will try and do this again next year, but for the moment, we just want to say a massive thanks to Todd for coming along and sharing his time and his wisdom with us. I've been very lucky to have him, and we'll be working with him in the future as well. So, a big thank you. Thanks to everyone else who supports this project and the boys behind the lens. James and Maka, you guys are awesome. and obviously specialised